video and podcasting website. Today, it's Table Talk with me, your host, John Pappas, and I am excited to be here with you. If you don't know what Table Talk is all about, it's usually a show that is about missions and God's discipleship and God's mission for his people and how to go about that. It's not only step by step, it talks about what we should be talking about, and it talks about all the things that God has for his people. So as we go through this coronavirus pandemic, we sort of expanded into current events, some headline news, and we usually talk about some Bible stuff and mission. So maybe we'll get back to just doing table talk with mission and that kind of stuff later. But for today, we are going to head right into the current events, because I don't know if you know this, there is some headline news that is happening right now. We're also going to show a video of a press conference that Trump had at the coronavirus press conference in the White House. And let me tell you, I'm going to move this right here because it's like right on the mic. Excuse me. If you hear a little noise there, that's me. But Trump went off yesterday, and I think he had right reason to do so, because they had been reporting, the news media has not been giving him a fair shake. And so he used his press conference like we would use a podcast, and we'll get into that in a second. And then we're going to talk about, in the Assemblies of God, one of the leaders came and said something, and the ministers jumped on them. And I'm going to talk about that today as well, because I think that's worth talking about, and it has to do with what we would talk about in Table Talk. So first, let's just jump into it. I'm not looking to be long today. I'm just looking to be poignant and punctuate what's going on all the way around. All right. So breaking news today, officials from the White House and correspondent John Roberts of Fox News is reporting that they have high confidence that the coronavirus was leaked from a lab in Wuhan, in the Wuhan province in China. If you did not know this, there is a bioweapons facility in China, in the Wuhan province, and it just happens that it's being reported with high confidence that in the virology lab, there was a lady who worked there, and can you believe this? She got infected by COVID-19. She went out into the wet market with her boyfriend, and that's where they think it spread. So she was working in the biolab, left, went to her boyfriend, to the wet market, and the next thing you know, the world has a pandemic on its hands. I can't imagine what that lady feels, if she feels anything else. But the question I keep asking myself, we know that Donald Trump has used tariffs, and he's held China to account for the economic warfare they've used on the United States. And I'm wondering if this is something that hasn't been conjured up by the crazy left and by a crazy government that wants to be in power to take down the president of the United States, as well as to hurt America economically, to take them down a notch as a world power. Now, I don't know if you can possibly do that, but I just don't think you can beat the United States, obviously, in a war. So why not try to do it with other means? And people like Bill Gates and many others have talked for a while, predicting that the next big thing that we had to worry about is exactly what we're going through right now. Go look at Bill Gates' TED Talk, if you will, where he talks about the next deep threat. This was in 2012, 8 years ago. So he prophetically sort of spoke into the future and saw that this was a threat, and here we are, right? So the question is this something that accidentally happened, or was this done on purpose? And the next question I have, should China be held accountable for what they've done, for their lack of protocols, for their lack of safety in their facilities that has, I mean, can you imagine what else is in that lab? What if it got out? What if they did it? I have a hard time believing in accidents like this. You know what I'm saying? That makes maybe it sounds like I'm being a conspiracy a theorist, but what I'm saying is when you're dealing with bioweaponry, you got to have a little bit more ability to be careful than this. And I just cannot understand how this could have been an accident by a girl that got infected in the lab. Now, could that be a possibility? Of course, but doesn't it make more sense? Like, if you want to find your place in the world, doesn't it make more sense than to let China do something like this as retaliation to the economic policies that Trump has put on China over the last couple years? We don't know that. I guess I'm speculating there, no question about it. But it does make me wonder, because there are people on the left here in this country that would kill this economy just to get in power. And I think that's wrong. If you want to get in, you got to do it through the vote. But everything is crazy these days. So who knows what else is out there. But in further news, and this is sort of crazy, and I think this is sort of funny, over the last, since what, let's say December, since this virus broke out, have you looked at the media and its response to how Trump has been handling this thing? President Trump has been handling this thing. And what I began to realize is I don't think that they're seeing this as a time for the country to come together, but a time to use it to show he can't lead. Not that he isn't leading properly, but they're trying to show that he can't lead, that he was late to the response, and that he isn't handling this as a leader should. Even yesterday, when Barack Obama came out and he endorsed Joe Biden, it only took him forever to do so. He was in his own like Mean Girls kind of way, that guy who has smiles and stabbing you in the back like Obama has always done. He has, I guess, even in his address to endorse Biden, he was knocking the way Trump has led things, and that he doesn't even know how to use the government and those kind of things. And he needs to get good people around him. Well, you tell me, who would be better than the people that Trump has around him? Can you name any? Do you know of any? And so the question is it true? Is the media giving him a fair shake? Now, should they hold him accountable? Of course. I mean, we're going to hold every president. Well, we don't hold every president. That's the problem. And everybody knows that there's been bias from the left, and the media, the mainstream media, is very left, where the cable media, like Fox News, and they're right. We know that. It's hard to get straight down the center news. But I got to tell you, personally, I think Trump has done a great job. I can't even imagine Joe Biden, who is gaffed in his own house on his own podcast. He can't remember his name. He doesn't know where his wife is. He doesn't know what's going on. He speaks in sentences that we can't even begin to figure out, and everybody gives him the benefit of the doubt. Can you imagine, how can that guy have a vision for the country? All he can do is be a face for the country, which means all he can do is be an echo chamber for those who want to manipulate that office for their power. And that scares me. But I can't imagine that guy running things. I don't know how a guy like that gets even nominated. But I guess if that's all you got, that's all you got. And the loony left that ran against them, they went so far left that they don't really recognize everyday hardworking Democratic, Republican people and libertarian people as well that just want what is fair. And they work hard, so they deserve. They don't deserve a ruling class. They deserve people that will serve them, and I think that's what we're missing. And I actually do see that in Trump. I see him trying to fight, to serve, to get things done. So, cheers to him. But I'm going to show a video, and it's going to start off a little weird, but this video is going to show President Trump in his conference. It's going to play about 5 minutes. And this video is going to show President Trump in his White House press conference, and he is going to begin to talk about some of the people that, like Biden and Pelosi, who have said some horrible things while making major decisions during this crisis. And then he's going to show the media and hold the media accountable. Can you believe that? Yes, I just almost burped. I just had a steak, and my goodness, was it good, boys and girls. I mean, the beauty of staying home is that it is good to cook on the grill. So anyway, he's going to have this yesterday's crazy press conference where he begins to just hold the media and some of these leaders accountable. Let's take a listen, and then we'll talk about it on the other side, and then we'll move on from there. Here we go.
In February, Nancy Pelosi said we should come to Chinatown. This is late February. Come to Chinatown. We think it's very safe. Come here. Let's all have the big parade, Chinatown parade, probably referring to San Francisco. And that's it. But I took this action early. And so the story in the New York Times was a total fake. It's a fake newspaper, and they write fake stories. And someday, hopefully in 5 years when I'm not here, those papers are all going out of business because nobody's going to want to read them. But now they like them because they write about me. Now with that, I have a couple of we have a few clips that we're just going to put up. We could turn the lights a little bit lower. I think you'll find them interesting. And then we'll answer some questions. I'll ask you some questions because you're so guilty, but forget it. But most importantly, we're going to get back onto the reason we're here, which is the success we're having. Okay? Please, you could put it on. Thank you.
People should be more concerned right now with the flu in this country.
A lot of people are concerned about the coronavirus because they're hearing a lot of news about it right now. But the reality is, comparing it to the flu, for example, it's not even close to being at that stage.
What if it is worse? Is this a moment where maybe countries put politics aside, a little bit of pride aside, and do we have U.S. officials, should U.S. professionals such as yourself get involved?
How worried should Americans be about coronavirus?
Coronavirus is not going to cause a major issue in the United States.
Well, we've asked them to accelerate whatever they're doing in terms of a vaccine. We will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days. To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Medicare patients can now visit any doctor by phone or video conference at no additional cost.
The first 1 million masks will be available immediately.
As there were more cases, and it was clear that it was spreading out of China, where it originated, the president took this move that he was widely criticized for by Democrats and even some Republicans at the time, which was he halted a number of flights from China into the U.S. The idea was to halt the spread of the disease, keep transmissions to a minimum. He was accused of xenophobia. He was accused of making a racist move. At the end of the day, it was probably effective because it did actually take a pretty aggressive measure against the spread of the virus.
His team is on it. They've been responsive late at night, early in the morning, and they've thus far been doing everything that they can do, and I want to say thank you, and I want to say that I appreciate it.
He returns calls. He reaches out. He's been proactive. We got that Mercy ship down here in Los Angeles. That was directly because he sent it down here. 2,000 medical units came to the state of California, these FMS, these field medical stations, and that's been very, very helpful.
The president has been
outstanding through all this. The vice president's been outstanding. Members of the coronavirus task force, very responsive.
We had asked if we could have, New Jersey could have access to a piece of the beds that are on the USNS Comfort, and the president came back, called me a short few minutes before I walked in here to say indeed they would grant that to New Jersey. So that's a big step for us in addition to all the other capacity. That news is literally hot off the press, and I thank the president and vice president who are on the call together.
President Trump approved Arizona's request for a presidential major disaster declaration. I want to thank the president for a quick turnaround. We requested this on a Wednesday, and we had approval by Saturday morning. And we are grateful to the administration for their continued support and responsiveness.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the president and the vice president for doing a really good job of communicating with all the governors.
All right. So after watching that video, can you believe what that conference was like after they showed that video? And believe me, he could have went through a lot more stuff. But let me show you some of the points. I've written down some things that I thought, here's some of the things that we need to think about. Did Trump respond? Is he getting a great response? In January 7th, when this thing was starting to launch, this coronavirus thing, Trump issued a response system in the U.S. through the CDC, all right, the Centers of Disease and Control. Through January 20th, so like, 13 days later, 2 weeks later, we find the first case of COVID-19 in the United States. January 31st, so another week passes, Trump announces China restrictions for travel. Now, what we don't take into account there, and there's more, I'm going to read some more here. What we don't take into account there is that China, during this time, is suppressing the truth. It's hiding and getting rid of the people that were bringing about the information that this COVID-19 thing was serious, and they were either putting them away, locking them down, killing them, or whatever they do over in the communist country, and they began to falsify information which skews the modeling that we have right now. Now, we know when we look at modeling, there's a numerator and denominator. There's numbers you plug into a model. And if the numbers are off, then everything else is skewed as well. And that means that's why when it was first announced that the models were saying like 2 million people were going to die, we forget that because the media has shunned that number because they know it's not true, and they were going to hold Trump responsible for that number. And so now as this thing has moved on, we know that it's way, way, way less than that. And you're not getting that in the news, right? Why? Because the models haven't changed as far as where we're plugging the numbers. It's the numbers themselves that are being reported that has been changed. So China not only hid this, not only changed the narrative across the world, but it was skewing and falsifying information. So when we modeled, we didn't know how to make the right decisions. If they're telling you it's not serious and the numbers are showing that it's not serious, then why would you react or overreact, right? But despite this, based on the best evidence that we have and the people that were talking to our president, Trump on January 7th decides to put a response team just in case together. He sees that the first case comes out a week later, and then he announces that there's travel restrictions, okay? So then a week later after that, on February 6th, the CDC ships its first testing. So we know behind the scenes a lot was going on, and they were following this thing very closely to see what would happen across the world. And as it became more serious and they got more information, they took deeper and deeper steps. Well, let's keep looking at it. So that's February 6th. A month later, we have a vaccine development. It starts to begin, right? Trump announces on the 11th a travel ban to Europe. Well, yesterday, or was it the day before, I reported that Europe is now was supposed to lift its ban on being at home Monday, and it decided to extend it because their numbers are now starting to catch up with the likes of Italy in Britain and France. Now, just to put that in perspective, Italy has now 21,000 deaths. Spain has 17,000 deaths, and France has 15. Well, now Britain now has 12,000, and they're worried that the pandemic is going to spread just crazily over there. There's wisdom in banning travel to Europe. The 12th, Trump declares it a national emergency. So he begins to shut things down. The 17th, he gives free Medicare screenings to all that can't afford it. It will not be charged through your insurance. How cool is that? The next day, Trump announces that with the Department of Defense, and they issue their first million masks. Well, remember when we were hearing about the mask crisis and the ventilator crisis? Turns out that was all lies, that they were right on top of it, that Trump was working in the background with people like Ford and other companies to get these things made and out there so that these companies would, or these people, the first responders would have what they needed. When CNN was reporting people that saying, we just don't have what we need, and all these kind of things that were crying on YouTube and posting across Instagram, it turned out that all of those videos that went viral were actually fake. And the girl was using it to get hits on her Instagram. Can you believe that? Well, despite all of that, and we could keep going on and on and on, as Trump said, and we saw that Governor Cuomo of New York praised Trump because he got those boats out there, those mercy ships out there. Governor Newsom from California did the same thing. He got the things that he needed, the masks, the ventilators, the help that they needed in California to level that curve for the coronavirus. And we could go on and on. Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, praises Trump. The Arizona governor, who was really worried before he gave his press conference, he got a call from Trump and got the help he needed. So what was Biden doing during all this? What was Pelosi? Well, Pelosi was criticizing Trump's leadership and wanted to have a parade in San Francisco at the heart of when this thing was taking off. Biden called Trump xenophobic when he closed China for the travel ban. You don't get those responses now. By the way, it came out yesterday that there was a woman who had now filed lawsuit against Biden for sexual assault. Where's the Me Too movement? Where is the media on this? Remember Kavanaugh? Remember all the evidence that they didn't have on Kavanaugh that they brought forth to keep him out of there, and none of it was true? Well, now they have somebody who's actually filed a lawsuit, and you don't even hear about it in the news. So what is my point on this? Is Trump getting a fair shake? Heck no, he's not getting a fair shake. You might not even like him. You may hate him. You may think he talks too much. You may think that he just says all the things that he shouldn't say and does all the things he shouldn't do. And you, my friend, might be right. But that's not the question. The question is it a fair shake? Yesterday it was reported that now Biden and Trump are tied in the polls. That's a great thing because Biden was up a week ago 10 points. Well, I mean, we have got to come together, stop politicizing the pandemic, stop using it, the crisis, for our advantage politically, and see where the needs are. And we need our leaders to serve us, not to lord over us. You see the mayor of New York, the mayor of Chicago, imposing laws, arresting people, arresting pastors and churches, while they themselves don't keep the laws and the very things they tell us not to do. You got this lady in Chicago getting a haircut and then getting pissed off about it. The media out there asked a question about it while she's arresting other people for going to a park with their kid or something like that. So it's crazy. And you know there's a ruling class when the ruling class thinks the rules are for you we people out there, us little peons, and that we're there to serve them, not they're there to serve us. And so we have to keep these people accountable. We need to keep China accountable. And this thing has been on my mind all day. I really do believe like we need to watch China and watch who their allies are, to see how they're going to come at America, the economic and world power of America. They're not going to do it straight on. Nobody can defeat America coming right at us. It's going to be through something like this. It's going to be an economic takedown. It's going to be a biological takedown. So we need to be aware of this, and we need our media to stop being biased to its opinions just because they came from a liberal school. We need them to report the news as is so we can discern and make decisions as a people that are out there. How about that? How about that? That's my opinion. That's the news for today. That's all I'm going to talk about. I think it's crazy. I think it's awesome what Trump did to hold those people accountable. How would you put yourself in that shoe? How would you like to seriously have to deal with that on an everyday basis? That is just crazy. Is it not? I think it is, man. Well, we're going to turn the corner. Today, I was looking at we're going to turn a corner to, let me just talk about it like this. Yesterday, one of the leaders in the Assemblies of God, which is a denomination that I'm a part of, and there's a lot of great leaders out there, he basically posted on Facebook something that I have been saying for 10 freaking years, okay? And he basically goes, what if got back to normal? What if there was no more such thing as there was no such thing as services, but only people that served others, that the people that we want to reach, that we're trying to reach through Facebook, we actually went and met? What if we served them? What if we went to them? What if sermons weren't a magic bullet? What if worship wasn't 3 songs by Jesus culture, but it was what you lived in everyday life as gospel demonstrations to others and intentionality in your discipleship with those who haven't heard? So you take the time to go meet them where they're at around a table, and you begin to befriend them. What if we, like Jesus did, and this was sort of in my last broadcast when I talked about Nathaniel and Philip, Jesus, when he's picking out his disciples, he's not inviting them to a meeting. He's not inviting them to a church service. He's not inviting them to a synagogue. He's not inviting them to a temple. He's inviting them to his life, and he says, come and see. Come and see what I do, and you tell me if it's what we should be doing. Well, that's what discipleship is. That's what biblical discipleship is. But we've turned it into programs. We've turned it into curriculum. We've turned it into sermonizing, and we stopped equipping the saints to go do it themselves. So therefore, in the church, we have what we see exactly in our government. And maybe that's the point. Maybe when you have spiritual hierarchies and when you have leadership hierarchies that are like a ruling class over the people, where the few are leading the many, that is a problem. That is one of the things that Jesus warned us against, and that's one of the things he scolded his own disciples against, that we're not going to rule like the pagans rule. Remember that scripture? Well, guess what? We have been doing these things, and then we've been calling them have-tos to be a Christian. And I could keep going on and on about it. Well, this leader in the church wrote exactly what I'm talking about right now. He's saying, what if we had to go do this? And of course, everybody jumped on him. All of these pastors, all of these leaders jumped on him because you cannot talk against the building. Well, let me tell you something. When Jesus came and he said, I'm going to tear this temple down in 3 days, they ended up using that against him on the day that they hung him on a cross. And I'm telling you, when you speak against religion, it's like speaking against a communist government. They come, they get you, they talk to you, they talk down on you, they make you shut up. You can't talk against the system. The system is what we have. The system has made it. The system is blah, blah, blah. And I think that is literally bullcrap. I think the church is people. I think God saves people. I think Jesus looked at people that thought they were pious, and he called them bookkeepers. Go read the New Testament, the Pharisee and the tax collector. There were bookkeepers, those who were keeping rules, showing their list, holding their trees and going, see, God, you deserve me. I've done this for you. And then on the other hand, there was the law breakers, right? Those were the people that always just didn't listen on the other end of the spectrum, right? They were breaking the law. They were living for self. They were hurting others. But here's the thing. Lawbreakers, law keepers, they both hurt people. They walk over people. One does it with a smile on his face. The other one does it intentionally, with not a smile on his face, but to get what he wants. But both of them get what they want. So what am I saying? I'm saying when Jesus looked at the world, he didn't divide it religiously between secular and sacred. He divided it between lawbreakers and law keepers, and they were both wrong. It wasn't religion that got in and non-religion or irreligion that didn't get in. It was they were all out. And if you don't get that from reading the New Testament, you ain't reading it right. And so what is happening is we keep adding rules to God's grace. We keep adding have-tos to God's graciousness. We keep adding don't-dos to God's grace, and all of it in religion adds up to heaven or hell. But it's only through Christ that we come into his rest. And as that rest settles into our heart, it births in an empowerment through the Holy Spirit that leads us to the places that God has called us, for example, like discipleship. And I do not understand why leaders like that, and I don't want to say his name, but I was so proud of him, and he got hammered, man. But, us missional leaders, we are very few. We don't look for credit. We don't get credit. We certainly don't get pointed at and go, look, I want to be like that. But I got to tell you, we have to ask some serious questions during this time. What if it doesn't ever get back to normal? Whatever normal was. Normal was dropping our kids off in this class over here, and we sat through a sermon and sang our 3 songs, right? We opened our Bible on Sunday. We listened to what the passage was about. We nodded our heads in agreement. Then we went back home and did our work and brought the kids to the games and did that. But we had no intentionality in our lives to live for Christ as they lived for Christ, to bring people into the kingdom of God while God is out there working to get people into his kingdom. We're not walking into what he's doing. We're just walking in our ways. And we're dragging the cross behind us instead of stepping through it, dying to those things and living for Christ. I have to tell you, I'm a little fired up about it. This leader, I'm a great leader. He's a religious guy, to be honest with you. I would not say he's full in on the missional thing, but he's definitely, I spoke to him, and he's definitely thinking and deliberating, what are we doing, right? And I got to tell you, do you know how many pastors, this is something you people that never know what happens behind the scenes in these churches that happen there. There are many pastors that just get dumped on, and they know what we're saying here is true, but they don't want to fight the system. By the way, I'm not looking to tear it down or fight it. I'm saying we got to get back to the basics. We have to get back to the gospel. We have to be gospel-driven people that are filled with God's Spirit, and we have to be, we can't just walk in our religious ways and expect and pray that Jesus brings things to our lives like salvations and evangelism. No, we have to walk an identity into what he's doing and see what he's doing with the readiness of bringing the gospel, demonstrating the gospel, and discipling people so that they can go do it. What happened to the everyday person that is empowered by God? Yeah, there's a lot of words right there. What happened to that? Why is that a fight? Why am I fighting with people over that? I don't feel like I'm fighting. They just ignore people like me. And I got to be honest, when I saw my friend, who is a great leader and a guy I've known for a long time, he got dumped on by a bunch of religious pastors that to be honest, they're past their time, or they're in a bubble so deep they haven't looked outside the 4 walls. And that's true. I'm going to say true that. They are not when is the last time they had a cup of coffee with an irreligious person, a person that will not go to church? When's the last time they actually had a drink at a pub with somebody who's hurting like that? When's the last time they talked to anybody outside of the 4 walls of church? When we get stuck in our bubbles, man, That's how religion happens. Have tos and don't tos take over, and we become bookkeepers instead of people of grace who are extending that grace and God's rest and love to the world. I wrote a book called Screaming in the Wind. It's all about this. And I'm asking the question, is the religion of Christianity actually keeping people from Christ? And the answer is what we're doing what people out in the world need to hear as a message of freedom? And I'm going to say no. And if you say yes, then the question is, then why are 80% of the American West rejecting our expression of church? Because the church is a building in that expression, but they don't. It's hard to reject somebody across the table. It's hard to hear. Let's say you're a person of a conservative. Excuse me. You're a conservative. Let's say you're a leftist. You could disagree through, like what I'm doing right now, through a podcast where you're not talking to anybody, but you get them across a cable, you throw some food and drink out there, and let's see what happens. At the end of the day, they have to talk to each other. They have to converse. You get what I'm saying? We are not having a conversation with the world anymore, and we're not bringing a gospel-orientated conversation with the world. The world thinks they know what we are, and we're definitely not showing them what we should be. And I think that's an issue. And so I'm just a little tired of that. And when I read the Bible, I'm reading the Bible right now through this podcast, through the book of John, and I see John's disciples leaving and going with Jesus, and then Jesus taking them, and they're going to another group of people. These people never stay put. They're always going, right? Even when Paul became a disciple, he wasn't building churches that build buildings. They were building people, missional communities, people that started on mission, that were using their fivefold ministries to reach the people in their neighborhoods, in their world. And that's how the gospel spread. It's a relational gospel. And when we're not even speaking to the world anymore, or we're rejecting ideologies without talking to people, then what is that? What is it? No wonder the world doesn't want to hear what we have to even present, or they already assume that they know what we are. But if we're just hiding our gospel in these little churches, or big churches, that's great that things are happening there. I don't say burn it down. I'm saying if we're not discipling, we're not doing what God told us to do. And you're probably saying, well, define discipleship. It's the process of bringing somebody from unbelief into belief and then doing it over again. Yeah, discipleship starts with the unbeliever, not with the believer. Now, there are some believers that have no idea what to do, so we have to take them. Come and see what I do. You can't do that from a pulpit. You can't do that from a classroom. You get what I'm saying? You have to go and do. And until we get that through our heads, the church is going to die. It's going to die. The church as we know is going to die. And I think what we're feeling is that expression dying. And that's okay. It's cool. Like, hey, I am not against a sermon. I'm not against Jesus culture songs if that's what you want to do, but it has nothing to do with discipleship. It may have something to do with the rhythms of your life, but that's not discipleship, guys. And you have to understand that. Those are things that were not either passed down by Jesus. Those are things that Jesus himself did not do, nor did his disciples do. Those are a Catholic expression that has been twisted into a Protestantism that came from a church that was 300 years later than Jesus and his disciples. You get what I'm saying? We're still in this old expression and old thinking of what church is, and we call the history of it sacred. And it's just history. You know what I'm saying? The methodology isn't the means. The means is the man, Jesus Christ. And the methodology is, how do we get to our neighbor? What's the distance? How do we travel it? And how do we befriend that person and love them into Jesus through friendship and drink and table and conversation? So I was really disappointed to see. I wasn't surprised, by the way. Not surprised at all that people were rejecting this leader who came out and said what he was actually thinking about and feeling. But I got to tell you, mission is a lonely job unless you're journeying with people. You think being a pastor is lonely? You got no idea. You know, why pastoral ministry can be lonely and hurtful is because there's so many rules and regulations and insinuations of culture that are put upon the pastor that are not even anything to do with the gospel. They can't move and do the things that they need to do because the people won't move with them because they're stuck in religion. And that's the issue, guys. That's the issue. So I want to encourage you, man, to think about what if you start. This is the question I'm going to leave you with today. What would it look like in your life if you started from the Great Commission towards a group of people? What would your ministry look like if you started from the Great Commission? That's the thought. If you don't know what the Great Commission is, then go read Matthew 28:18 through, was it 22? If you don't know what the Great Commission is, that's sad, especially if you're in ministry. Matter of fact, if you don't know what the Great Commission is and you're in ministry, you shouldn't be in ministry. But that's where you need to start. What is the mission of God? What are the people that you're called to? And what would your ministry look like if you started there? All right, hey, this has been a great podcast. Enjoy your quarantine. Enjoy this show. Hey, we're starting to do some gaming. It's going to be fun. So you might catch me on Facebook. Look me up there. But I am out of here, man. This is John Pappas for Table Talk and InferenceSwap.com. We'll love you, and I will talk to you on the flip side, man.